Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into some incredibly rich source material today, coming from the popular animated series Ghulam Rasool. Now, you might be thinking, what exactly can a kid's cartoon teach us? Well, as it turns out, quite a bit. This particular episode about Eid al-Adha is absolutely packed with profound moral and practical safety lessons. It beautifully bridges the gap between everyday childhood innocence and some very serious foundational teachings. So, if you want to see how cultural traditions, religious ethics, and real-world safety all intersect, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
So, what can a runaway goat in a dangerous game actually teach us about Eid? To set the stage here, the story introduces us to a group of young friends, Fazan, Bablu, and their prize goat, Sheru. At first glance, it just looks like kids being kids, getting super hyped about an upcoming festival. But the narrative cleverly uses this innocent playtime to hook us into a much deeper conversation. It's contrasting that kind of reckless, boundless energy of youth with the solemn, grounded teachings that the festival actually demands.
Let's kick things off with Theme 1, Respecting Sacrificial Animals.
When the episode begins, our young friends aren't exactly rolling out the red carpet for Sheru. Instead of treating him with reverence, they're literally using the goat for a race. They're pushing him to run faster, mostly just for their own entertainment and, let's be honest, neighborhood bragging rights. But the source text explicitly calls this out. It makes a point of noting that forcing these animals to race causes them real physical distress and exhaustion. The core ethical obligation being taught here is that sacrificial animals must be treated with deep respect and proper care. They're destined for a sacred purpose, so their comfort has to be a top priority. Basically, they are not toys.
The real heart of this lesson is summed up in a powerful quote from the episode. It says, "The person performing the sacrifice gets a good deed for every hair of the sacrificial animal." I mean, think about that for a second. Every single hair. To put that into perspective, imagine how many hairs are on a goat. When you realize that each one represents a good deed, it completely reframes how you look at the animal. It completely strips away the idea that this creature is just a prop for a backyard game and elevates it to this profound means for spiritual reward.
Moving right along to Theme 2, the significance of Hajj. So while the younger kids are goofing off with the goat, the older character, Ghulam Rasool, is actually lost in a daydream about the holy city of Mecca. The story does this to deliberately link the local neighborhood practice of Qurbani to the monumental global season of Hajj. And it grounds the whole thing in fundamental theology, reminding us that Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. The takeaway here is that the local festival doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It's intimately tied to one of the most important obligatory acts in the entire faith.
To really impress the gravity of this upon the viewers, the show clearly defines Hajj as an obligatory pilgrimage, but specifically for those with the physical and financial means to do it. It goes a step further, though, by emphasizing the spiritual stakes. It teaches that an accepted, righteous Hajj brings the ultimate reward of paradise. It's a great way of establishing that this isn't just a fun holiday, it's a time of immense spiritual opportunity.
All right, things take a bit of a turn here. Let's look at Theme 3, Dangers of Unsafe Games. While all those deep spiritual reflections are happening, a literal crisis is brewing. Because the real goat wasn't tied up properly, he easily escapes. But instead of, going to find the goat or fixing the problem, the boys decide to invent a substitute game. They start playing goat themselves. And this escalates into them actually tying a rope around young Bablu's neck. As you can probably guess, things go horribly, horribly wrong. The rope gets stuck, Bablu is genuinely choking, and it turns into this frantic scramble to find an adult with a pair of cutters to free him and literally save his life. It is a very stark, very real depiction of how fast a silly game can turn fatal.
But we have to ask, why did this even happen in the first place? When confronted, Faizan reveals a pretty heartbreaking motivation. It turns out his father just couldn't afford to buy a goat this year. So, to cope with that feeling of missing out while all the other kids in the neighborhood had animals, Faizan tried to simulate the experience by tying up his friend. The source material uses this really poignant moment to highlight how financial insecurity, mixed with the social pressure of a holiday, can push kids to make incredibly unsafe choices just to overcompensate.
This brings us to the resolution. Theme 4, the true meaning of the festival. This is where the whole shebang comes together. The runaway goat, the dangerous stunt, the financial pressure, it all culminates in a firm, compassionate message. Eid is a solemn remembrance. It's not a competition over who can afford the biggest animal, it's not a show, and it is absolutely never an excuse for dangerous games. The explainer makes it clear, if a family cannot afford a sacrifice, that is perfectly fine. Kids shouldn't feel the need to substitute that experience with life-threatening stunts because the obligation literally only falls on those who actually have the means. The show beautifully ties this all back to its historical roots, defining the festival as the Sunnah of Ibrahim. It reminds everyone that this whole tradition is about honoring Prophet Ibrahim's great test, his sacrifice, and his absolute submission. When you view it through that profound historical lens, suddenly racing animals or tying a rope around your friend's neck clearly misses the entire point of that legacy, doesn't it?
So, I want to leave you with a final question to really chew on. Are we honoring the true spirit of the festival or just treating it as a game? The lessons from this source material are crystal clear, and they challenge us to reflect on whether our own celebrations are actually rooted in respect and remembrance, or if they've just kind of become worldly distractions. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.